This is Andy Purewal for Boxing Social in association with Betfred, and I'm joined by trainer Tony Sims over Zoom. Tony, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Andy. You?
I'm all good. I'm all good. Obviously, it's another fight week for yourself. This time round, Felix Cash faces Denzel Bentley for the British and Commonwealth titles. You're obviously in another fight bubble. How's this one faring in comparison to the matchroom ones?
Yeah, no, it's good. Been treated well, and the hotel's nice, so there's nothing to complain about, mate.
It's good to hear. Obviously, a big fight week once again for yourself. How's Felix been looking? How's he been feeling ahead of Saturday?
Yeah, he's good. He's in great condition, and he's trained hard for the fight. We started training just after Christmas in January without a date, so he's ticking over. And obviously, once Purewal was done, he's been full steam ahead, and he's in good condition, and he's looking forward to the fight now.
We've seen little clips going out over social media of Denzel and Felix. I don't know whether clashing is the right word, but certainly having a back and forth in various kind of different scenarios in the bubble, at press events and what have you. Have you felt there's been a little bit more of a needle between the pair of them as the weeks come closer?
Yeah, there's a little bit of rivalry. They're both sort of local boys, aren't they? And obviously, one's a matchroom fighter and one's a Queensbury fighter, so there's always going to be a bit of rivalry there with a promotional side. And they're both unbeaten, and they're both good fighters. So it's a really good matchup, and it's a middleweight division where in the past there's been so many good fights in the middleweight division. When you look back at British domestic fights, you've only got to look at Mark Kaler, Errol Christie, Nigel Benn, Michael Watson, Chris Eubank, Nigel Benn. So down the years, there's always been great matchups in the middleweight division and great domestic fights, and I believe this is one of them.
With regards to kind of a heated debates we'll go with between the pair of them, one thing they've spoken about is their past and previous sparring experiences. Tony, what's your recollection of when the pair of them previously sparred?
You can't look too much into that. I just done a few rounds together and it got a bit heated. But listen, a lot of spars get heated, and it's part and parcel. Sometimes training and sparring with people you don't know. Just done a few rounds, got a bit heated, and that was it. Really, it was no big deal. I know there's been a lot of spoke about it, but to be honest, they ain't even seen each other since, and that was like 2 or 3 years ago.
One thing Denzel has said, he says he sees Felix as a dirty fighter. Just your thoughts on those comments?
Listen, Felix is a rough fighter. He's a rough kid, you know what I mean? And I don't know about dirty. I mean, he had 1 point deducted in his last fight, but that's the only time he's ever been warned for anything. So, and you can't really go off the couple of rounds sparring they've done. So, I don't really know what he's talking about there. But what you got to remember is Felix was a GB amateur standout. He was on GB for 3 years. He's won multiple titles and gold medals around the world. He's been in with the Olympic champion. So he's like a top amateur skilled fighter. But also he is a rough ass as well. He's a rough fighter. He likes to get inside and fight inside. So, whatever Denzel wants to say about Felix, one thing you can't take away from him is his ability, and in his amateur pedigree as well. So, he's fought a lot of good fighters, and he, as a pro, he's unbeaten and Commonwealth champion.
With this bout now, and with it only being a matter of days away, as it's edged ever closer, Tony, how do you see it playing out? I spoke to Eddie last week, and Eddie, he's confident that not only will we see a good performance from Felix, but he expects him to stop Denzel. Do you share the same views?
I think if you look at just their backgrounds and pedigree, you got to make Felix the favourite in the fight because, as I was saying earlier, he had a hell of a lot of amateur fights, at top level, whereas Denzel never. And if you look at their professional pedigree, probably Felix out of the pair of them has fought a little bit higher caliber than Denzel has fought. If you look at Denzel's record, he had the draw with Heffron, and then obviously he stopped Heffron in a good performance with a badly shut eye. you know, and if you look at what Felix has done, he's like knocked out Cullen, who was a decent fighter, when he's knocked out Wellborn in his last fight, who was a former British champion. So he's a little bit higher caliber opponents, but that all don't really matter. He's what happens on the night, you know, and obviously, you know, Denzel Bentley's handlers are going to fancy his fighter, and I'm going to fancy my fighter, you know, and that, what makes it a good fight is they're both unbeaten, and one's got the British title, one's got the Commonwealth title, and, you know, it's going to make for a good fight. You know, they're both going to come in with that mentality where they don't think they're going to lose, and, you know, that's why everyone's talking about this fight, is because it's a really good matchup. You know, it's a 50-50 matchup.
In Felix's case, Tony, have you guys thought about what could be next?
I don't always like to think about what's next. I like to think about now what's happening in his next fight. Because if you start getting carried away with yourself thinking, well, what's next, you know, that's when you can slip up. So just, you know, do one fight at a time. You know, if Felix comes through this fight, then you know he's ready to progress and go on to the next level, which is European level. So, but we'll just take this fight at a time. You can't, you know, he's trained hard for this fight, you know, and he knows it's going to be an hard fight, and, you know, he's ready to go Saturday.
Look, just looking at kind of this past weekend, we saw Liam Williams fall short against Demetrius and Andrade, Tony. Let's say Felix is successful against Denzel. Would that be a good matchup, Felix versus Liam, for kind of that next step up before hitting world level?
Yeah, maybe. You know, there's a lot of good matchups for him out there. You know, his weight, obviously. Listen, the middleweight division domestically ain't very strong at the moment. You know, when years gone past, you know, it's been a strong division, but, you know, there's only probably 2 or 3 of them in, or 4 of them in the division now that's strong. So I think once he beats Denzel, you know, there's only sort of Liam Williams above him in the rankings. Now, whether that fight makes sense after this or whether Felix goes on European level, I don't know. But that's something that you got to sit down and think about after this fight, you know, and it's hard to say, really. He's just got to get this fight out of the way and get the win.
Just on that fight this past weekend, Tony, what did you make of it? Demetrius Andrade's unanimous decision victory?
I thought Andrade looked brilliant in the early part of the fight. You know, he was phenomenal. I mean, Williams done well getting through the early rounds, really, but as the fight progressed, I thought Williams was coming into the fight, and I think he was in either the 9th or the 10th round when he nailed Andrade, and I don't know whether he realised how hurt he was, because he sort of didn't jump on him, or rather than Andrade was like doing a lot of holding, but he got through the round, Andrade, and he just, you know, he got through the next couple of rounds and won the fight. But I don't know whether he's weight drained Andrade at middleweight, because he looked sensational in the first half of the fight, not the same in the second half of the fight. So whether he needs to move up a weight or not, I don't know. But it was definitely a tale of 2 halves, that fight.
In Demetrius' case, there was talk about unification bouts next for him. How do you think he would fare against a Jamal Charlo or Gennady Golovkin?
Well, you know, he's a world level fighter, that's for sure. And, you know, he's very awkward. You know, he throws that like feint left hook to the body and then switches it up into, the feint right hook to the body and switches it into the right uppercut, which is really clever, because Liam Williams didn't really see that coming. And he got caught multiple times with that. So he's really smart the way he fights. It's very difficult to hit. I just don't know whether he's struggling on the weight, because, you know, as I say, he looked sensational for the first half of the fight. But you got to think, if Golovkin was in there and he's like fatiguing in the second half of the fight, I mean, we don't know what went on behind the scenes. Maybe he weren't in the best of shape. I don't know. But you got to think, if Golovkin or Charlo and he started fatiguing like that in the second half of the fight, you got to favour them to get on top of him, really. You know what I mean? And that will be his problem.
And Tony, just kind of going back to kind of Ben's recent victory, I just want to quickly get your thoughts as to what is next for him. We spoke about Amir Khan fight. Have you had any kind of further talks about that? I know Amir played it down.
No, not yet. I still haven't sat down with Eddie and properly gone through the next opponents. And Andy.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
back.
you there? Yeah, sorry. I haven't gone through the next opponents with Eddie yet, but I just know that he's going to be boxing at the end of July, beginning of August. I just know that he's going to be fighting them, but I don't know who he's going to be fighting or where it's going to be. So we've got to have a meeting. I think it's next week. We might be sitting down with Eddie and going through that.
All right, Tony, we will leave it there now. I'll leave you to enjoy the rest of your day. Obviously, best of luck on Saturday, and I'll speak to you again soon. Thank you for speaking to Boxing Social.
Thanks, Andy. Appreciate that.